visually works so well, like you said, with the monofilament. It's like you wanted it to be, the light to actually catch it. Like it makes it, and the disappearing ink, it's like something that's not there, but then when you rub the surface, it is there. And like, it just worked, like the feeling of it, the real quality of the title, like you said, we were talking about when you walk in, it just sets the, it's like the perfect title. It's so great.
Well, thank you. And I always think of these birds as flying away. That's kind of how when I'm thinking of the idea of the show and this visual, I don't think of them as flying in. It's flying away. And that's why I really like the idea of when it was made known to me that it could actually escape the museum space and be exiting it. I really like that because now it's sort of like, I think of it as they're heading on out and we're, eventually it's all going to go out that way and beyond. So, yeah, I was really happy.
Yeah. What about the newspaper company? Have they been involved in this at all?
Well, I thank the Jonesboro Sun in my thank yous. And they were, I didn't get a free subscription for 20 years. And that's another thing, by the way. I am cheaper than hell. I am one of the cheapest people that you could possibly know. It doesn't show. But I swear, if I buy something, I gotta save it. It's strange. But that goes back to some people think, and my grandparents were, what was the Depression, whole saving. Some of you may have seen, like the classic example of that is the thing I've done with the rubber bands on if anyone's ever seen any of those, but as a sort of homage to my youth and to my grandparents, they would save rubber bands, and there'd always be this one knob in the house that has this. So I've done exaggerations of that, where it's like I'll have a door and it'll have like this much of a clump of rubber bands, So I think, I'm of that age where it's like a hangover of that, where so if I have something, I save it, and that's what happened with these papers. I mean, I paid for it. I don't know, maybe I just think I could use it for insulation, I don't know, or flower beds. But I just started saving it, and then I really couldn't stop. And eventually I knew, and some of you may remember, I've done those newspaper column pieces.
They were in here.
I've probably showed them in here. I think I showed some at Rhodes. And those were years worth of subscription paper, various New York Times, whatever, and they would be. It was like a play on words, or is that a pun? Newspaper column. Anyway, they'd be these columns that where I really liked them because you could see little bits of history, not the whole story, but just little like striations of information. So anyway, I've worked with them before, and I've saved them. And I had been thinking about like just covering a floor with them, but that didn't seem like I was doing enough. So this whole bird thing sort of started to kind of gel. And like I said, this space is like perfect. I mean, perfect for that. So I love the shadows. Can you notice the smell? When you first come in, you can smell and I have to, of course. My work has a smell. Several years ago, I did a piece that was, what was the dimensions of that thing? It was probably about 15 by 25-foot American flag made out of used cigarette butts that was on this floor somewhere. They were so glad to see that thing. But, no one was smoking. I still have that in boxes. It's like done in tiles. soon as you take that thing out and open the lids on it, it just hits you. But anyway, I love the shadows. It sort of makes it bigger than it already is, I think. Where's the angel again? There's an angel. See the angel? The trumpet, no less. Is that a trumpet or a beer bottle? I think it's holding a beer bottle. That should be my logo. An angel with a beer bottle.
Did it take a long time to figure out the lighting and how you wanted to put it?
Eric had a vision of that, and he said, shoot it from the middle tower in order to get all that stuff on the walls. And I said, that sounds really good. And as soon as he did a test, I went, yes.
But there was a practical aspect too, because once the newspaper comes, you can't use the list without having.
Yeah, so we had to decide. That was the interesting, a very interesting thing about this project is a lot of it was like assumption, trusting instincts that it think like the, because Eric, he had to have all the fishing line cut to different left. He wasn't going to go up on that lift without pre-cut lengths of fishing line. So we had to decide what they were going to be. It wasn't like, well, we'll figure it out later. It all had to be, and every decision made, I think, worked. I like I was saying to Leslie, I wouldn't change a thing about it, and that's unusual to have an exhibition completed, this part and that part, and not have a regret or something. But there's not a thing I would change. Seriously.
I mean, all the order, you can almost see that there's an order, like the lengths, the exact lengths, because then it throws into really kind of a randomness of the shadows and where the light is from, like the contrast is really
And I'm really happy with the kind of organic nature of this room, and then the kind of more rigid, kind of controlled things going on in the other room. I had tried this thing with Frederick's entry, which maybe we'll see, because he had a play bill that meant something to him. And then he had this envelope full of clippings that his mother proudly had saved of the press coverage of the play. So I was just, well, I'll have the thing, and then I'll have this explosion of there'd be a playbill in the middle, and an explosion of these little clippings coming off. Because that's here.
Yeah.
That's here. That should be like this, just in contrast. So, but let's head into the other room. I don't want to keep you guys. There's so much to talk about. I'm going to try to keep this under 3 hours. So this part kind of fell nicely into place. I guess I'll admit that we weren't exactly sure how we were going to show everything, but then Eric remembered that they had this shitload of glass in from some other exhibition that it's that size, the size that fits the whole page. So they're okay. Well, we've got the material and then I liked the way that looks. So then it was just a matter of cutting other glass to fit the other sizes. Les and I spent over a week just kind of studying what we had, kind of having a good, clear mental inventory of the different twists and turns that these submissions took, and had to be a little bit, because of the space limitations, we had to cut some stuff. fortunately, we remembered that there was this other room over here, Gallery A, where that was the savior at the end, because we have the history room back there, you know, with the Kennedy assassination and fall of the Berlin Wall and Elvis's passing and all that. And we had more of a local history kind of room, plus the crime wall. I don't know if anyone noticed that there's actually a wall devoted strictly to criminal activity. And then we had all this stuff in here, and plus the other, and what the hell are we gonna, and especially, you know, when we would listen to the statements or read what, and you know, some of it was so heartfelt, and I hope you guys have a chance to listen to at least a few of those, that there was no way you could get rid of it. It would be like, I guess, bad karma or something. So, you know, we went over those, and fortunately there was that other room, which I think maybe has about 15 additional submissions in it, and that just kind of opened up, yes, now we feel like we've got enough space here.
So you didn't cut any?
No, we did cut some.
You still did.
And a lot of that, well, we also, some people did multiple submissions, so I think there's only a couple of times where someone has more than one submission. So we kind of did it that way. Other things that maybe there was no, for some reason there had been no audio statement or written statement, kind of meant that maybe there wasn't as much, you know, so some of those were eliminated. Because everything in here has a and/or audio statement, written statement, except for a couple of anonymous entries, which actually are mine. Because I really, funny story is, I really wanted that Jonesboro's Son, Sniper's Rain Death, Terror at West Side, you know, one of those horrible school killings. And I had a student, Michelle Riggs, I don't know if you know her. She said, you know, my mom has that paper. Because Michelle was in school. She wasn't in that grade. I think she was in the grade younger. But imagine being a mother and hearing that stuff on the radio or TV, and your kid is at school. She said it was a total, you know,
Wasn't
freak.
that the first school shooting?
Oh, I think really early. I think there was one, I think, in Mississippi before that one. Pearl, I think, Mississippi. But I said, well, I gotta get that paper. She said, she's not gonna let that paper out of the house. I said, oh, I'll bring a bottle of wine and maybe try to, you know. She says, go ahead, but it's not gonna work. So when we did the Jonesboro Sun collection event, I started snooping around and looking for stuff, and they had a folder of West Side, you know, original papers. So I borrowed that. I was also disappointed that we hadn't gotten the 9/11, and I was thinking, especially younger people, that would be their Kennedy assassination kind of thing, and that there was one would pop up. Someone almost gave me one, but that's a long story. So I felt like I needed that. So that book that bound Jonesboro's Son from 2011 is also a kind of curatorial slide-in kind of thing. But I was, you know, really happy with what people turned in. Some were funny. One of my favorites is the refrigerator door, of course. And I don't know if it comes across that that's actually kind of a refrigerator door. That's how I envisioned they were hung on this kid's mother's door. But he brought that in, and I said, why didn't you bring the whole door? Because they were moving. He says, I didn't think of it. But anyway, so I was actually thought about putting a refrigerator door there, but so that's kind of a reconstruction of you know, moms, and I don't know if you noticed, but some of them are actually whited out, and the mother changed the information on the comics in order to apply directly to the family. I thought that was kind of cute. But any questions?
Well, I was wondering, were there any realizations when your students brought clippings into class about kind of the difference between their media usage, you know, reading news on your phone, or versus the clipping and like the kind of material like hanging it on your fridge when there's a clipping that's like, what was the discussion like around?
Well, I guess the realization was that it was very spotty. The number of, some just say, I don't have any. I'm not even sure I know what you're talking about. You know? And then seriously. And then others, like Lauren, she's got a great, where's your, the dad, or the that's a really, yeah, you need to, you know, that's a really sweet one. You know, she, you know, and quite a few others got it. I mean, Michelle, the one whose mom refused to give up the newspaper, her box of, she had these, you know, this memory box, the taller, the shoe box over there, that had all kinds of stuff in it, but a significant number of clippings. And so some people totally got it, and it was like talking to an old, you know, like sort of like, you know, asking a 75-year-old woman for it, and a, you know, 19, 20, 21-year-old, 23-year-old student. It was like, okay, same, you know, no difference. But then there was, you would think that probably 99% of the 75-year-old lady or man would know, it's, you know, say, yeah, I got her, or I won't, or I don't give a shit, you know, whatever. But with the younger people, it was either the same as talking to a 75-year-old person, or a totally different, like, clueless kind of, I really don't know what are you asking me?
And why would anybody do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know.
It seemed like a novelty more than like a, or
It seemed totally alien.
just alien.
Just totally alien, like they didn't have any idea. And I would say, well, ask your mom, you know, or ask, you know, and either they were too lazy or too busy, you know, to do it. And a few actually, Caitlin, hers isn't in here, but she asked her grandma to send some stuff, and they were really quite funny, but I didn't feel that there was enough invested in it, because it was just sort of like, she sent it. You know, some people did that, but not very many. So, anyway, it was, I guess there was nothing particularly surprising about the results, you know? One thing I will say is probably more than any comments I've got were, you know, I have this great clipping, but I can't find it. Not from the kids, that would be from the, you know. But that's, maybe I should do one of people describing the clipping that they can't find. Might be an interesting project. Well, there was a picture of a guy, and he, you know, that might be kind of funny, actually.
Yeah, and like you were saying last night, like how that clipping, you know, like, or Les maybe was saying it, like it turns up. It's like this, because it's a physical thing, you don't know where it is. It's disappeared, but then you're removing or whatever,
Correct.
and it all of a sudden turns up, and it triggers, you know,
Yeah.
that material thing triggers the memory.
Yeah, like you used it as a bookmark or something.
Yeah.
Did you end up getting any clippings from Jess, the Australian girl in our class, or from
Well,
overseas at all?
she did give me one, but it was, someone sent a photocopy. And actually there are a few photocopies, I must admit, but at that time, I was kind of being more strict in because she was from Australia. But the one I'm really upset about is a girl had a, it's funny, she says, yeah, she brought this 9/11 paper in. And I'm there, where did you get this? Because it was the Melbourne, Australia newspaper covering 9/11. So it was an Australian view of it. And she said, I think it's from, I got it from Little Rock. I think somewhere. I think it's from Little Rock. I said, this is not the Little Rock paper. This is the Melbourne, Australia paper. Where did you get it? Oh, yeah. She had been to New York. And I have a statement and everything. I just don't have the paper from it. Don't kid. But anyway, she changed majors, I think.
You scared her off?
Maybe. But she had been to New York in 2011. 2001, I'm sorry. And, school trip, and she met somebody from Australia on that trip. There was maybe it was some kind of exchange program where there were, multiple nationalities going on these tours and stuff. So she befriended this girl from Melbourne, and they went to the World Trade Center, went up and did the tour and all that stuff. And then like about 2 months later, so they became pen pals. So 2 months later, 9/11 happens. So this girl from Melbourne sends the paper to her to just let her know that we care or something here. So I actually have looked at this paper, and, laughed about it because she didn't know where it came from first. But then she was going to bring it down to Jason. We were going to do that was a test to see how it went, if she could find it. Maybe she's lost here somewhere on the campus, but she apparently never made it. But I have her statement and everything, just no paper. So that was, I guess, another one that got away that I felt I needed to compensate for, and that's how the book ended up. But I kind of like the book because it sort of shows another way of storing these things. Any other questions?
How did you store all these? They're so clean.
In banker's boxes,
Okay.
neatly. I read the paper. I've read most of these unless I was on vacation or something. And read them, and then close them up. Do that.
Get back in shape.
Decide how many of the ads I want to keep in there.
Okay.
Because
So you
each
don't
ad
keep all those ads.
adds up.
Yeah.
And then put them in box. When I'm done reading them, I put them in the box. When the box is full, I mark it, take it to the studio, and add to more storage problems. Start another box. So I think I get about a month. I think it's like about 8 boxes per year. So add that up, it's a lot of space.
Yeah.
So how tall is when you do the columns? Is it like 6 feet?
No, it's
How
about
tall?
like this.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've done those with other papers, and that's always fun. Maybe somebody might remember, but here's the Jonesboro Sun, then there's the New York Times, then there's LA, so you get this, like, it's the same year, but
Yeah.
it looks different, which I really like.
Yeah.
Plus black and white versus color, a lot of interesting things happen. I'd like to do another, what I'd like to do is have somebody say, a year from now, we'd like to show 10 columns, and then I save them, do it, and then I don't have to deal with them. That would be nice, because things are getting ridiculous.
Wouldn't throw them away anyway, they just go back on your shelf.
I'd like to maybe, no, I'd like a commission or something.
Oh, I
Where
see.
it's there,
They buy it.
Yeah, it's like they buy it, I do it, and then it's there and it's done. Because I think it would, to walk through them, is really kind of an interesting experience. Like if this room had like, say, a dozen, columns in it, of various height. It's kind of a nice, interesting experience, especially if it's all the same year, but they all look different, and they all have different information on them because of location,
Yeah.
so, we'll see.
Do you remember that when I brought Kim Levin over for her show, which is, those columns were in that show, and the flag, was the day after the Jonesboro Massacre?
That's right. Because
It's the day
you
after.
drove her up there, or somebody.
I drove her up,
Yeah.
and I had rented a car, and when I got to the car rental agency, they, the news, the media people had come off the planes and gone in, and they would pay anything for a car. So they had taken my car, and I have to drive my old Honda wagon, which I didn't really want to drive over there. That's how we got there. It was spooky.
Yeah, because some of you, Joe would probably remember this, Carol probably would. But Jonesboro was like a media circus. I mean, you went down streets and it would just be all those satellite dishes or whatever those things are. I mean, it was just wall to wall. So, and it was kind of interesting because Kim Levin, who I've since become quite good friends with, that was the first time I ever met her, and she thought she had landed in alien territory because there she's from New York, and everywhere else maybe isn't quite so, whatever. And it's like, this is like the center of the universe at that moment, and she can't even rent a car to get to Jonesboro. So that was unforgettable, and she talks about that experience a lot, that was really in fact, I think the essay she wrote for that show
Yeah, had that.
talked a lot
Right.
about that kind of
Right.
crazy
Yeah.
environment to find yourself in. We also have and Jason did a good job of fishing out a West Memphis 3 artifact, and I thought he did a good job with his statement about as a photographer, how interesting that was for him to see the image that ended up in the paper, but also he found this book of contact sheets at the Jonesboro Sun, and so I gave him the assignment of find what else? That's called the contact. The negative. Well, not the negative, but the whatever contact, whatever. Find that shot in those, and that's what's below it there. So I thought that was kind of an interesting submission.
So you and Les spent a lot of time thinking about the arrangement?
Yes.
Do you guys have like a grouping that sort of stands out to you as one that just really struck you? Is it
a cute one, I think. And David McCarthy is a dear friend of mine, and he submitted this one kind of tongue in cheek, but also I think he's still trying to pick up chicks with this. His heroics, and he's a huge football fan, European football fan. If he's not writing some tremendous art historical tome, he's watching British soccer. So anyway, so he submitted, in addition to that wonderful, homage to his mom, you need to hear what he says about that, because it's sort of like his mom knew what he was going to be before he even existed, in a way. So that's a really kind of sweet and wonderful, serious one, and then there's this kind of sort of funny one where he kicks the winning, and all of us, even the most uncoordinated of us, have had that one sports moment, where you'll never forget it. Anyway, so he submitted this one. Of course, it had to go next to Ashlyn Doty's bomb, Sinks Perfect River Crest. I mean, they just, it's like ancient, an ancient one, and then a really current one. This is, I don't know what the date is, this was like a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, but I thought that was a funny combo. Let's go to the crime wall. Crime wall. That guy last night, he was hoot. I said, your thing was so good, I want to hug you. And he goes, you can hug me as long as you want. Anyway, so here's the crime wall. We knew all about this one. This one's cool. This woman, who's actually a crime reporter at the Jonesboro Sun now. What's her name? Sunshine Crump. Why is she a crime reporter? Maybe because her mother was murdered. I can't remember the year on this, unfortunately. I think it was in the early 80s. But anyway, there was a 20-year mystery as to how she died. And Sunshine was, there's Sunshine in 2005. She was involved, she kind of was dealing with reporters and this lead kind of thing. Well, it turns out that 20 years later, it's discovered that like the uncle killed the mother. So this is like a sequence of woman's body found in Texas. They resolved it. Then the man who, the uncle, I think he did a lie detector test, and it was determined that he was the murderer. He had been living this lie and was still friends with the family, even though he killed himself. So that was kind of, and this is Sunshine's stunned reaction to what had happened 23 years earlier. So I thought that was a really interesting submission. Every exhibition needs to have a murder mystery. So then another lady, and you know, this, of course, Croatian hijackers negotiate. It almost sounds like a punchline of a joke or something, sort of. But it's actually this one, the 18 drug arrests made, that is the, was why she saved this. She knew most, Janet knew most of the people that were arrested in this bust. But I look at how beautiful that is. God, what has happened. And also notice the size. You may notice that throughout, that the newer they are, and the curlier the pages get. And then, has anyone actually studied this insane thing here? On one page, we have a suicide pact that went terribly weird. We got an unmarried farmer, not a married farmer. An unmarried, this almost seems like it's not real. Unmarried farmer killed in auto collision. Another missing lady, 5 spectators killed when plane crashes. I mean, the whole thing is this tragedy after everything is a tragedy. Anyway, strange abduction case. So that's kind of a fun one.
How many people are there in Paraguay?
Really, it's almost like the whole town is
The whole
involved.
town is on Paraguay.
Well, I'll tell you, you've been to Paraguay,
Yeah.
haven't you?
It's a little
It all makes total sense. You're not from Paraguay. So, and, I mean, this charming stuff. I mean, this guy, obviously his mother loved him, and he still loves his mother.
And
And
she's
she's coming,
96.
she's coming.
Yeah.
Jason needs to get a shot. You need to be here that day. He's gonna bring his mom.
How old is he?
I don't know, but his mom's 96.
58 or something.
His mom's 96, and
He's gotta be older than
he's
that.
gonna bring that lady,
He's not
the
his
lady in
mom.
the picture, to come see this sometime soon.
I love the type, the lead type,
Yeah.
because, as he points out, that wouldn't have lasted 12 hours in most cases. Somebody who knew his mother pulled that type before it was melted down to become another story the next day.
He's a real famous Memphian, you know. He's written a book on
all the old movie theaters in Memphis.
He seemed like an interesting fellow, and he totally got the whole, you know, I mean, he totally knew what he wanted to submit when he was like, he was waiting for this call for submissions, and there it was. Finally. Here's a couple, hey, here's an interesting kind of set of stuff. First of all, I don't even know what to say about this. But and Greeley is a really good friend of mine, and this is these snippets were found, I think, inside the wall of a building on South Main that he had renovated, and he had saved them, I think, for a long time, not exactly knowing what to do with them. And this exhibition gave him the opportunity to kind of figure out what to do. So that's a really nice addition, and I thought in a lot of ways it's not that different from what Carolyn Trimble has done here, but I'll leave it to some art historian to really figure that all out. But I like the fact that this one here is near this, and this is because there's sort of, this was found under a floor in another renovation project, and this guy thought it was kind of cool because he went in there and found it almost like an archaeologist would find something, and started studying it and looking at the dates, and some Les, I think, found it, the date on here somewhere. Okay. I don't know where. Les, do you remember the date on this?
41.
Like early in the year of...
Well, there's one up there, and it's a little before that. It's one of them up there is from 41,
They're both from 41. I
and
think
this
this
one
is,
is earlier in the year.
yeah. So and that's why
February
that's
or
why we
something,
put
February
these
21st.
together. I mean, in a way, this is reconnected to that because of how they were discovered, and then this is related to that in that that's now here was something that was carefully saved about the upcoming world, you know, the beginnings of World War II, you know, and so here's one that was preserved purposefully, and then the same time period, one that was preserved kind of accidentally, but they're just a couple of months apart, the two newspapers. So I thought that was kind of a cool.
Seems fascinating in a way that someone saved this when they found it in the crawl space, because